Follow us on Twitter at LA News Guy. That's twitter.com/LA News Guy. Sunday Morning Newsmakers with Larry Marino. AM 870, The Answer.
My guest is Ward Connerly, founder and chair of the American Civil Rights Institute, and he is joining us to talk about this story in the news this week about how California may be a step closer toward reinstating affirmative action, ACA 5, a measure that could be on the November ballot. Ward Connerly, a former regent for the University of California, good to talk with you again.
Good to talk with you.
This is a story you and I talked about years ago as Proposition 209 came along to voters approved in 1996 that prohibited universities and government institutions from considering race when it comes to admissions and hirings. That was a long-fought battle, and it seemed like it was settled law. What happened?
What has happened is that the Democrat Party has become a monopoly, a political monopoly in California and in Washington state, for example. And they have built themselves around the concept that some call identity politics. And if you look at some institutions of our society, some of the identities that they are conceived around are not faring as well as others. At the University of California, for example, where I served a 12-year sentence, as I call it, Americans of some African descent are not as represented, is the term, as those of Asian descent, for example. In the area of public contracting, black-owned businesses have not been as successful as whites, for example, in certain areas of public contracting. And so there has been a move afoot in Washington and California, ironically, two of our most diverse states in the nation, to bring parity, is the term they use, into existence between blacks and Americans of Asian descent in the collegiate environment, and to get more contracts from minority-owned businesses, primarily black. And the only way they can do that is to use what ACA 5 calls government preferences instead of equality of treatment, which I believe the Constitution commands, the American Creed commands. And so we're going to have a big fight over this next 4 months or 5 months, if and when this bill passes, and I expect it to pass by the end of this week. So we're going to have a real fight in our hands in our state.
Yes, paint a picture for us why Prop 209 came to be, something that you were very supportive of, and what the problems were that brought it on, and what you see happening if we go back to that kind of situation pre-209 and we allow racial quotas, for example.
Californians are a unique breed, in my opinion. We are people who come from all around the globe, different cultures, different skin color, different religions, different everything. The only way, in my view, that we can live in a civil society where we respect each other and we explore the opportunities that are available is that our government treat us all as equals and that we treat ourselves as equals and that we pursue our opportunities without regard to race. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended effectively the Jim Crow era, during which I lived for a large part of my life, that Civil Rights Act said that all people were entitled to equal treatment of the law, which is what our 14th Amendment of our Constitution says also. Well, over the years, this program that we call affirmative action had really gotten out of hand. And the government was using affirmative action to sort among us, to pick winners, pick losers in virtually every segment of our society. And as a result of that, we were beginning to suppress the opportunities of one group of people, Americans of Asian descent, in favor of those who were performing less well, Americans of African descent, in the collegiate environment. And so 209 came about as a way to bring us back to square one and to say, now look, we're going to have to treat each other as equals, and the state, small s, the state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to any individual or group on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of public employment, public education, or public contracting. Those were the 37 words of Prop 209. Simple, direct, and consistent with the American creed of we hold these truths to be self-evident, and you know the rest. So Proposition 209 was born of a desire to make sure that this dynamic, diverse, inclusive society would remain true to its creed of us being equals, not only in the eyes of God, but equal in the eyes of ourselves and our laws.
But now that could be torn down with ACA 5, a measure that could go before voters and overturn Proposition 209. What do you see happening? I mean, you're pragmatic. You look at the politics. You mentioned the Democrat majority, supermajority in this state. Do you see times have changed? The demographics are different. This is something that is going to steamroll through, or do you think there is a California way of doing things where they're going to say no, this is wrong to put quotas back in place? What do you think is going to happen with the lay of the land of this state?
Excellent question. Californians are, as I said, a rare breed. I moved from California in 2017 and moved to a more hospitable political environment, namely Idaho. And I lived there from June of 2017 until about 2 months ago. Some of the most rewarding days of my life were spent in Idaho, enjoying the fruits of American freedom without being the center of attention based on this issue of diversity. I think that the people of California still have that spark within them that's independent and wants to do what they believe is the right thing to do. Discriminating against people is wrong. We know that that's wrong. The right thing to do is to correct that and make sure that there is not discrimination and that we're treating each other as equals. While the politicians and the establishment has certainly changed demographically, I'm not sure that that spark of freedom that we know is within the heart of most Americans is totally gone. I'm just not sure of that. We'll find out soon.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this, because we have very limited time. Quick answers. What would be the one thing, if you engage this conversation with a neighbor or a person, to explain to them why it's important not to go back to affirmative action? What is the one strongest argument you could make?
Do you have a daughter or a son or a loved one that you told to play by the rules and everything's going to turn out all right. When they apply to college, what do you want their fate to be? How do you want them to be treated? If they've worked hard and played by the rules, what do you want to happen to them? I believe the answer to that, certainly in my case, will be I want them to be treated fairly. I don't want their color or their gender to be used against them because they had nothing to do with that.
Right, you can't change that. It's what you are, and if somebody is getting a preference, then somebody is getting kicked to the back of the bus. Correct?
That is right. So well said.
That's how I would term it in simple terms. I know it's powerful language because it's just not right. We've overcome a lot of things. Certainly, at the beginning, though, you mentioned the example of black firms not getting the contracts. Well, how do you write that? Is that an education issue? Is it a mentoring issue? How do you fix that?
We first of all must recognize that there aren't as many black entrepreneurs as the market might dictate. So the first thing is you have to open up a business. You have to hang up your shingle. You have to go for the government jobs. If that's what you want, you go for any jobs. But you first of all have to go into business. The institutions themselves need to look at their practices to make sure that they're not simply rewarding what is called the old boys network, and to make sure that if factors are such that, state another way, they have to make sure that the conditions that they impose for awarding the contract are valid and relevant. And if they are valid and relevant, is it possible to go on the basis of the lowest responsible bid? If somebody is saying they'll do the job for less and they're capable, demonstrably capable of doing that, you take the low bid. If it's a circumstance where you're looking for some criteria, you're looking at some criteria that make sure that somebody isn't lowballing this, then you delve into that to make sure that it's the lowest responsible bid. But first of all, you have to have more minority contractors bidding on this, and there has been a shortage of minority contractors.
I wish we could talk longer.
Prop anybody up.
We're running out of time. I want to thank you. A very important subject. Thank you, Ward Connerly. Really appreciate your time with us. We'll have you back.
You're quite welcome, always.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sunday Morning Newsmakers with Larry Marino.